Okay, now I'm going to share some information about validating data. So it's very important for us to validate data. So let's look at what is this. So first let's take a basic example here. Let's say we are having some kind of a sensor data. So sensor reading, let's say reading is equal to 100. So we need to validate this data, whether this is real data. So we can use an if condition, if sensor reading, and if sensor reading we can do something. So let's say print sensor reading times 2. Okay, here we are multiplying the sensor reading by 2. So here if I run this, it makes sure that there's some data. So here in the sense of an if condition, this executes and checks whether there's something here, but this condition will not be executed if the value is 0, because 0 is considered as nothing, is considered as false. So here let me run this. So this time, although sensor reading has some data which is 0, this if condition doesn't execute because the reading is 0. This is very much similar to having if 0, right? So let me put 0. If 0 means it executes to false. Code is unreachable because it doesn't execute, because if 1 means true, if any number means true, if any negative number also mean that it is true. So here we get the answer, because 0 times anything is 0. But here the most important part is here. Next we have something called none. So suppose there's no value for the sensor reading, we can initialize it with none. None is a type, so we can also validate if sensor reading. This time if none. Let's see what happens. Print sensor reading. So here again it's unclear, but let me show you this by putting some asterisk marks and also a comma. So now we can see whether the stars get printed. If there's nothing, if nothing means again false. So here, although this has a value none, it will not be executed. So suppose we want to check whether this sensor reading is having some value. So in that case, you can do something like this. These are the techniques that I use to validate some data. So if sensor reading is not none, if it is not none, we can do something. Print sensor reading. Okay, it's not none. So let me execute this. It doesn't print because it is none. This time let's put 100. If it has some value, it will be printed. So here again, here I can use 0. So this time it will reach inside the if condition because it is checking whether it is not none. This is the most common way to write this statement, or else you can also do something with the operator. So if sensor reading is equal to none, you can have this, but we want the opposite. If so, to invert the logic, if not sensor reading equal none, you can still again print. So this is also valid, but we don't use it much. So let me run this. So here you can see 0 0 get printed 2 times. So this is also okay, this is also okay. The better one is this one because it's more readable, but you can use this as well. So here we are validating whether there is data, whether the data is not none, so that we can do some execution. So this is very important because sometimes we want to initialize variables with none. None is similar to null in other programming languages, which means that there's no data. So what if I print such a variable? Let's check. So here I will print sensor reading. It has none, right? So anyway, this will not be executed, this if condition, because it is none. So let me run this. So here it just prints none. When we print a variable which has the value none, it will be printed as it is. So in this way we can do some things. So let me do something like this. If sensor reading is none, we can also do this, is none. It will check whether the sensor reading is none, and here we can print the sensor reading is none. Okay, we run this. So here you can see the result. We can first we print it's also none, the sensor reading is none, because this is none is checking. And also we can do double equal operator as well. This will also give the same result. If you like that style, you can follow this that style, but the common form is to use is. So it is very essential that we know these things. Next, I would also like to show you some other details. So suppose this sensor reading is an array. So let's say 100, 200 and 300, let's say. Okay, now we can print this one, no problem, sensor reading. And also we will print the length of sensor reading. So here obviously we get 3 as the length, and we can also see the array. Suppose one of this data becomes none, still no problem, none is also counted for the length. So again we have 3. So in this way we can do this. Suppose we are required to filter out all the values. So we can also do something like this, sensor reading equal. So we can use something like this. So let's say element 4, we can write 4 element in sensor reading, and we are going to append if element is not none. So in this case we'll get the values which are not none. So here 100 and 200. So if this is a little bit complicated, we can also break down this to something like this. Okay, let's try to break this down. So anyway, we need a for loop or some kind of a loop. So for element in sensor reading, which gives us the ability to loop through all the elements available. So print let's say element. So here we have the opportunity. So here it will iterate through each and every element 100, 200 and none, but we need to filter out the none. So anyway, to do this I will use an secondary list. Let's say it's blank, and while we are looping we will check whether is element not none. If it is not none, what will we do? Is not none, what will we do? We will append the secondary list dot append, and what we are going to pass element. Okay, after doing all this, let's print secondary list. Let's try this one again. After iterating through all this, we get the secondary list which has 100 and 200. So in this way we manage to loop through and check whether the data inside this is valid. So this can be very powerful when we want to work with data, because sometimes we will have none values, and in that case we need to handle them properly. So hope you learned something which is very practical and which is very important when we are working with projects, to filter out variables with invalid data. So thank you very much for watching.